Hi, I'm Uzo, and welcome to Module 5 and the final module of your BTEC Level 1 Health and Safety in a Construction Environment course. Now, this is Module 5, and Module 5 is about working safely around plant and machinery. So by the end of today's session, you should be able to list ways in which moving machinery can cause injuries, state hazards of working with plant and equipment, describe why it's important to keep a safe distance from plant and equipment, describe how method statements can help safe working near moving plant, and state state how to reduce and control the hazards and risks, and basically describe the warning signs and symbols used around moving plant and equipment. And something I thought I should add here is basically one of the features of a modern construction site is moving traffic. So there's a lot of moving traffic, dumper trucks, cranes, all sorts of things, heavy machinery, industrial equipment that are being used. And some examples include equipment such as drills and grinders, machinery such as cement mixers and pneumatic drills, plants such as dumper trucks, cranes, bulldozers, and they all pose hazards and they need to be used correctly and safely. Also, you need to be aware of others who are using machinery and understand that they may not be aware of you. Okay, because it's all quite noisy and can be quite noisy on a construction site. You must take care, must take precautions. Don't assume anything on a construction site. Okay, so you can't assume that the person saw you. They might not have seen you. So just bear that in mind. Okay, and just follow proper safety precautions. Finally, just know that moving plant is traffic. Okay, so don't think, it's just sort of bulldozers or trucks moving around. Any plant that's moving, and you know that we sort of talked about plants such as dumper trucks, cranes and bulldozers. Any plant, it mustn't be, like a lorry or anything, okay? Any plant that's moving is traffic, and it should be treated with the same caution as you would treat any traffic on a road, okay? So on the next here on the screen, we're going to go through some typical items of plant and machinery. So the first one we have here is a digger. That's a pneumatic drill. Here is a grinder. And then you've got a road roller. That's a cement mixer. And obviously you know that on bigger sites, they're bigger ones. And that's a crane. Now, from the illustrations that we've put on here, you can see that moving plant is large and it's very heavy. So it's not always possible in a construction environment for the operator to see anyone else who might be in their work area. Can you imagine sort of working with around a crane? Don't assume that the person can see you. So you have to be very careful. Also, equipment such as cement mixers will not stop working even if you become trapped in the moving parts. So again, you see that you have to properly risk assess before use. Don't think, oh, I've used this a million times. Every time you have to come and use a machine, a piece of equipment, machinery or plant, make sure that you're trained to use it, and you have to do a risk assessment, because something might have come loose, something might have been damaged, and obviously make sure you're wearing the right clothing as well, because can you imagine having inappropriate clothing and then you're caught in the moving part of a cement mixer? So do you think about that? I think I remember having a chat with one of our previous students who actually told me of an accident one of his colleagues had, wearing a hoodie that had, I think, the drawstring around the hooded area around the hood, and the drawstring got caught in a cement mixer, and it was just not a good thing. So definitely do take care. Also, grinders and other cutting equipment produce sparks and flying fragments that can cause burns and eye injuries. So do think about, using, again, proper clothing and personal protective equipment. Here we're going to talk about the hazards, the risks, pardon me, and injuries from moving machinery. So, in the first unit, we did cover hazards. So a hazard is something that could cause an accident. So, for example, a knife is a hazard, and the risk is that if you don't use it properly, you can cut yourself. And again, so as we can see here, the risk is the chance of the hazard causing an accident. And sometimes, a risk that, a hazard will be there, but the risk is if you don't use a piece of equipment properly, or, pardon me, if you don't use a piece of equipment properly, or you don't follow the safety guidance, the risk is that you could actually cause an accident or cause harm to yourself and others. Okay, so we're just going to go through an example here. So a hazard, a dumper truck traveling close to the edge of a trench. And remember, in the first module, we did actually go through one of a particular incident where a dumper truck had gone close to the edge, obviously not knowing that someone was in there, and the sand collapsed and basically buried the person there. What is the risk? The risk is that the edge of the trench could collapse and the dumper falls in, injuring the driver and anyone working in that part of the trench. Okay, and so you can see here that hazards, risks, and methods for controlling them are dealt with in risk assessment. So this is what, I've talked so much about risk assess everything. It might seem like a bit of a kerfuffle, but at the end of the day, these things are there to protect you and others that you are working with. So if he had done his risk assessment, or if he does the proper risk assessment, he'd be able to see, okay, the area is not reinforced properly, probably. The next thing he would know is that there's someone actually working in there. He wouldn't assume that there was nobody in there, and he could actually then see that there's a likelihood that he could cause an accident. Yeah, so think about all these things. Also, like I said, we did cover risk assessment in Unit 1. I would like you to go to your, to answer the questions and complete the tables on pages 37 to 38 of the workbook. And also you could just, on a piece of paper and attach this to your notebook, you can actually sum up like some situations within a construction site, or think about some hazards within a construction site, the risk and what should have been done. Okay, so it can be an unwritten summing up of a situation, for example, crossing a road safely, but do think about a couple of hazards when it comes to plant and equipment on a construction site, and then write the risks and what could have been done. Also, when you're writing this, do think about or put into account what the task is. So you've been told to use a grinder to cut some stone, so that could be a task. What is the hazard? What risk could arise from the hazard? The severity of possible injuries if you don't listen or use the proper health and safety guidelines, who will be affected by the possible accident, and any control. So, what can you do to stop any injury or anything that could happen? So things such as training or using PPE. Okay, so that's definitely something for you to think about. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to have like a working example now. Okay, so I know I've given you something to do in the slide before, but now it's, let's put that into context. So we've got a hazard. One of the hazards here, we've got a couple actually. Just going to hover over here. So we've got wheeled vehicles, the grinders and cutters. I've just talked about that now. Hydraulic systems, cranes, got cranes, electric saws, air hoses, and welding. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do is that we're going to look at the risk and the possible injuries associated with this. So one thing, before I get to that part, what you could do is actually pause the video and talk amongst yourself to see if you guessed the say or got the answers right from what I was going to say. So I do have a talk amongst yourself if you're working in a group. But if you're not working in a group, you can actually just look at the hazards, write the risks and the possible injuries, and match them with what I'm about to say. So with wheeled vehicles, a risk is become an impact or becoming trapped. So remember in module 1 we did go over someone trying to control traffic and not hearing and the traffic controller wasn't being heard by the lorry driver because there was a drill going off next by, and then he was impacted by the vehicle. He was hit and then became trapped. Next one is grinders and cutters. So with grinders and cutters, the risk is because of the moving blades, there will be flying fragments and sparks. Okay. Hydraulic systems crushing or becoming trapped. Okay. Cranes, again, crushing. Whew, I don't even want to think about that. Can you imagine something falling off a crane? It is a fatality. So again, risk assess and follow health and safety guidelines. Crushing, objects falling is another risk, falling from height. Electric saws, again, moving blades, flying fragments, depending on what you're cutting or you're sawing off using the electric saw. It could be there'll be fragments flying around, and if you don't have the proper PPE, safety goggles or whatever that is, you could have fragments hit your eye or that sort of thing. Air hoses, so high pressure air is a risk from this. And then with welding, sparks, heat, bright lights. Again, when you're welding, you have to have your safety goggles, proper safety gear that you have to wear. Now let's look. The next thing we're going to look at is the injuries. So I'm just going to take a little pause here. Did we think along the same lines with the risks? If you did, high five. If you didn't, not to worry. At least you have some ideas now. So injuries. Again, with a wheeled vehicle, the injuries would be broken bones or internal injury, depending on how severe the impact was. Grinding and cutters. Again, remember we said with the moving blades, cuts, if you don't wear like your safety gloves, flying fragments could cause eye injuries, sparks could cause burns. Hydraulic systems, crushing, which means broken bones or internal injury. With cranes, the injuries could be, again, broken bones, internal injury, head injury, or a fatality. I know it says injury, but a fatality, which means that the person could actually die depending on how bad the crushing was. Okay. Electric saws, cuts, eye injury, or burns. Air hoses, bruising, internal injuries, and air embolism, and I will talk more about air hoses in a minute. And with welding, the injuries would be burns, eye injuries, and electric shock. Okay, now a note here on air pressure hoses. Internal injuries can result from direct impact from a blast of air from this equipment. Okay, so just imagine being blasted by this equipment. It could actually cause you internal injury. At worst, it could be a blood embolism. This is basically air bublets in the blood, and this can be created by high pressure air passing through both clothing and skin. So please, if you're ever in that situation where you're having to use an air hose, do follow proper health and safety precautions. Now, also, we're going to talk more about injuries from equipment, and one of the things we're going to talk about now is arc eye. It's basically a particular injury you can get when working on a construction site, and that's basically when you're using electric welding. So arc welding is basically electric welding. The bright lights produced when doing arc welding can damage the eyes, and if you get arc eyes, it could basically be sore eyes, redness. It could feel as though there is sand in your eye. Okay, and you can see from the picture here that the light is very, very bright, hence you must use the proper safety equipment to protect your eyes. Okay, and you know, like I said here, if you get arc eye, sore eyes, redness, feels like there's sand in your eyes. I've actually had that actually. Well, I'm not welding anything, or I haven't been welding anything, but you know, it felt like, you know, there was a grain of sand in my eye all day. My eyes were watering, really uncomfortable. So, you know, and I wasn't even welding anything. So can you imagine when it's an injury that you've caused yourself by not following proper health and safety precautions? Another thing I have to say here is, because arc welding is often present on large construction sites, it is important to make the hazards and risks clear. Okay, so if you're not sure, please do ask your employers to make the hazards and risks clear about arc welding. And it should basically be carried out behind light filtering screens. So you can see the, you know, protective gear this individual is wearing on there. And the operative should be wearing the right PPE to protect both their eyes and their skin from burns. And it's not always possible to erect protective screens on a construction site, so extra care needs to be taken by anyone in the vicinity to protect themselves from the glare of a welding arc. So, you know, sometimes when someone's doing some arc welding, could be that, you know, on top of the gear that you have to wear to protect other people, they have to like erect a protective screen, and then you are behind there and you're carrying out your work. But sometimes it's not possible, so you know, you have to, or the supervisors have to take extra care to make sure other people's eyes aren't damaged from the very bright lights. The only safe precaution basically from this is to basically avert your eyes, so look away, keep as far away from the welding operation, so as far away as possible, just stay away from that area. And if you have to work in the vicinity, keep your back to the welder, and that's what can be done if there is no protective screen erected. And there we go. So here is the protective goggles, and here is the protective. You remember in the first unit, I think that was, we spoke about protective clothing, and that's a gentleman there with his lovely overalls. So, and it says here in red, never look directly into a welding arc, and that's basically to protect your eyes. Okay. The next thing here is that we're going to talk about is methods of reducing the risk posed by plant and equipment. Now, first thing is keep your distance. Where possible, you keep your distance from working plant and equipment until the operator knows you are there. So don't just stand there and expect that they're looking at their mirrors or looking around, you know, to see that you're there. Never assume anything. So keep your distance. Stay as far away as possible until the operator knows that you're there. Other ways include your high-vis jacket or other protective equipment, reflective strips, and these reflect light and shine lights and can be attached to clothing. A banks person, a banks person is actually trained and they're trained and authorized to direct traffic around the site, and they have to go on a course and attend the proper training to be able to do so. Audible alarms For example, when the vehicle is reversing, you can hear them making quite a loud noise, so that you know they're reversing. You then have physical barriers, and that's to stop vehicles or pedestrians entering certain areas. For example, where we are now on the university, there's quite a lot of construction work going on, and I've seen quite a lot of barriers in some places to stop pedestrians or vehicles coming to those areas. The other thing is limiting stops on plant. So the machine will stop when it reaches a certain position or on contact with another object. So example is a lift door. One thing I just thought I'd say on here, I'd give you or send you some links to some information about a banksman or banksperson. Okay, and the main points is that a banksperson must be trained, they must be authorized, and they must be used only where other control measures are not possible. So if it's not possible to use, I don't know, alarms or whatever that is, then a banksperson is used. The other thing also is that with audible alarms, many large vehicles are fitted with reversing messages. So sometimes you can actually hear the vehicle going reversing, or the common ones, it's just making a loud noise to show that it's reversing. But the HSE states that they should be in working order, should be loud and distinct. Obviously, when you've heard some vehicles reversing, they don't sound particularly pleasant, do they? And that's basically for you to know that they're reversing. The reason for that is, if it's kind of like a normal noise or something that's very pleasant to the ear, it can easily become part of the background noise, and you wouldn't know they're reversing and then get injured. If you were standing behind the moving plant or vehicle. If it's not possible, then flashing warning lights can also be used. Now, with limiting stops, we just talked about that just now. This basically refers to a setting on the machinery that causes it to stop when certain positions have been reached. For example, on a cutting tool, the limiter can be set so that the cutting action stops when the blade has reached the required measurement. On plant, it can be a setting or cutout switch that shuts down the operation if an object comes into contact with it. So an example an example that we've just used is a lift door, and basically it will not close if someone is standing in the way. So if you sometimes I know that I'm looking to catch the lift very quickly, and it's just closing, and I just put my foot in. I think it's very stupid to do that. Should listen to myself, but basically I put my foot in, but the thing is, the door will not close. It will just open back up until that object has been removed, basically, and in that case it is my leg. Don't try that at home. But it basically wouldn't close if someone is standing in the way. It also happens on trains as well. And it could also be a sensor similar to the parking sensors that are used in cars, which tells the operator if someone is near the vehicle. Okay, so do have that in mind. We did say that we're going to talk about method statements. Now, I've seen a couple of method statements. They are, depending on the task, they can be very, very, very detailed. And I think, they're a good thing. A method statement is a very detailed description of how a task or operation can be carried out safely and effectively. So I've seen method statements for different tasks on a construction site, and how they can be carried out, and it's literally a step-by-step detail, even down to risk assessment. Okay, in relation to moving plant, it should include designated pedestrian routes. So if possible, do create safe routes for pedestrians working on the site, so that they can move around safely without coming into contact with traffic. Okay, it should include traffic management. So rules are needed for vehicles on the site, including signs, trained people to operate the plant. So it makes sure that only people trained to operate various types of plant are the only ones who actually operate it. If training is needed, it must be provided. Okay. Now, just some general notes. The method statements should also specify the location and the nature of the work, the dates the work will take place, responsibilities and contacts, and it may also contain a risk assessment. Some of the method statements I've seen actually do contain risk assessment, and I'll try and see if I can make available a method statement. I used to have a learner who dealt with asbestos removal, and I think he did have a method statement, so I'll try and look for that, and I'll make it available for you guys to see. Writing a method statement. A method statement is a detailed description, like we said, of how a task or operation can be carried out safely and effectively. And basically, it should include what sort of plant will be used. You need to specify the type of the plant. So for example, is it a bulldozer for clearing the site? So dumper truck for carrying materials, road rollers for compressing soil, or newly laid road surfacing. What will the plant be used for? So which jobs will require the plant? This needs to be specific. Also need to talk about safety precautions on this method statement. So what safety precautions will be put in place to protect workers from the plant? And also basically just look at the previous slide for more information, because we've just had a talk about this. Couple of things for us to talk about next is warning signs and symbols, and I know this is in your workbook as well. Now, warning signs are covered by health and safety regulations. So it's under the Safety Signs and Signals Regulations 1996. The health and safety executives state that warning signs should be standard colors and shapes, and we're going to look at them in a moment now, and they should be properly maintained. They should be sufficiently large and clear so that they can be easily seen and understood. So you can't have a warning sign that is so small that you need glasses or a magnifying glass to look at it. Okay, they need to be very clear for the safety of others. They need to be durable as well. So not one of those that a bit of wind blows and then your safety sign is kind of flying like a kite in the air. Okay, it needs to be well secured, and it needs to be securely fastened. So there are four main types of warning signs. You have the warning, which is a yellow triangle. You then have the mandatory actions, which it's got a blue and white symbol. So for example, like on the motorway, you would see like a blue circle with a red cross, which means no stopping at any time. So that's like a blue symbol, but with construction it's blue and white. You have a prohibition, which is a red with a white symbol, so things like no smoking on the site and so on. And you have a green, which is green with a white symbol or text for information. So let's look at a couple here. As you can see, the first one here, I'm just going to hover over it, is a red with a white symbol, and that says no smoking. Okay, so the shape is circular, it's got red borders and a crossbar. It's got black symbols on white background, and it means it basically shows what you shouldn't do, and in this case, or you must not do, and in this case it's no smoking. As you can see here in the blue sign, it's a mandatory sign, so you have to do it, okay? And it's circular, it's got white symbols on a blue background. Again, shows what must be done, okay, what you must do. And in this case, it's that you have to wear eye protection. Then you've got the warning sign here, this triangle. So it's a triangle that's got a yellow background with black borders and a black symbol, and it basically tells you, it warns you of a hazard or danger, and it tells you that there's a danger of electric shock, okay, and a danger of electric shock risk. And then you've got this one, which is a square or rectangular. In this case it's rectangular. It's got white symbols on a green background, and it basically indicates or give information on safety provision, and it says here that there is you know, obviously first aid, okay. On here we're looking at some more warning signs and symbols. The typical signs here are, and I'm sure some of you who maybe are already working in construction would have seen these. So typical signs are danger, danger, plant operating, and you can see that. Watch out, forklift operating area. You can see the hard hat area. So I've seen these on quite a lot. In fact, on all the construction sites I've gone to, I've actually seen these. And that's basically that you must wear a safety helmet or your hard hat. And then you've got this one over here, danger, crane working overhead. Obviously you have to be very careful. I've seen lots of no entry signs. No access to operatives. I've seen quite a few of them. Do pardon me, guys. I have actually gone a bit ahead of myself here. There we go. Just give me 1 second. I've actually seen quite a few of those on a construction site, especially the hard hats, okay? Very, very important. You know, you shouldn't be on a construction site without a hard hat, okay? And that's it. So if you've got any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I'm more than happy to support you. So thank you very much for watching, and this concludes the construction course.